watching World News program coming to you live from Algiers with Mimid Zian. To the headlines. Martyrs and wounded in a horrific Zionist massacre in the Shuja'iyya neighborhood. Hamas threatens the massacre will not go unpunished, and Gaza's health ministry says the occupation is using new weapons in its war in Gaza. Outrage and condemnation over the renewed U.S. stance on the Sahrawi issue. Algeria expresses regret over Washington's reaffirmation of its position. And the Polisario front asserts that the U.S. position contradicts international legitimacy. Also tonight, in developments on the Iranian nuclear file, Pezeshkian affirms Tehran will not accept direct negotiations with Washington. The U.S. Treasury imposes new sanctions on Iran. And trade war intensifies. Trump raises tariffs on China to 125% and announces a 90-day temporary tariff freeze for several countries. China hits back with 84% tariffs on U.S. goods. Hello and welcome back to the details of our program. First, in our file, 5 Palestinians were killed and others wounded in a new airstrike carried out by Israeli occupation warplanes on the Shuja'iyya neighborhood in eastern Gaza City, just hours after the occupation committed a massacre in the same neighborhood that resulted in the killing of 30 Palestinians. The Palestinian news agency reported that Palestinian ambulance and rescue teams, assisted by residents of Shuja'iyya, are continuing the search for missing people under the rubble. New massacre has been committed by the Zionist entity in Al-Shuja'iyya neighborhood on Wednesday. The Zionist forces led at least 31 Palestinians dead and dozens wounded after bombing a multi-floor house. Osama Ayadi has the report.
The Zionist onslaught on unarmed civilians persists as new crimes have been committed, leaving numbers of civilians dead in the Gaza Strip. A new Zionist airstrike killed at least 31 Palestinians, including children, in a house in Shuja'iyya. Medics reported that dozens of others were wounded in the attack that hit a multi-floor residential building in the eastern suburb of Gaza City. Many were still believed to be missing and trapped under the ruins of the building. The strike also damaged several other houses nearby.
23 martyrs arrived to Al Ahli Arab Hospital. We are talking about more than 60 injured. There are nearly 19 people missing from the Abu Amsha family until this moment. Other families have nearly 15 missing people as well in this massacre carried out by the Israeli occupation forces against innocent and armed civilians.
Local health authorities confirmed that at least 9 other Palestinians were killed in separate Zionist military strikes in other parts of the Strip, raising Wednesday's massacre's death toll to at least 40. Last week, the occupation military ordered Shuja'iyya residents to evacuate, saying forces intended to operate against militants in the area.
The Israeli occupation directly targeted a residential complex in Shuja'iyya district. This area is full of residents from more than one family, including displaced people and owners of the house.
The Zionist forces resumed their bombardment of Gaza on March 18 after a 2-month truce and sent troops back into the Strip, committing endless massacres in addition to full blockade of all crosses in and out of the Strip. In the 3 weeks since, the health ministry in Gaza says the Zionist forces' strikes have killed nearly 1,500 Palestinians.
The bombs are very big, which killed the citizens. It made big houses collapse. It feels like an earthquake hit the area. Our crews are working with their bare hands.
Since late March, the Zionist occupation has ordered Gazans out of territory around the edges of the Strip to create what it describes as a security zone. Residents fear the aim is to permanently depopulate swathes of territory amidst daily massacres and killings against a population who only hopes for peace.
The Islamic resistance movement Hamas said that the Zionist occupation committed one of the most heinous acts of genocide by bombing a densely populated residential area in the Shuja'iyya neighborhood east of Gaza City. Hamas added in a statement that the ongoing massacres supported by the United States are a stain on the international community's conscience, emphasizing that these crimes will not go unpunished and will not be forgiven or forgotten with time.
These ongoing massacres against our defenseless people, fully supported by the U.S. administration, which is a complicit in the aggression, represent a shameful stain on the international community, which stands helpless and silent in the face of the most horrific acts of mass killing and organized genocide. These barbaric crimes committed in full view and hearing of the world against innocent, defenseless civilians with the aim of extermination and sadistic revenge will not go unaccounted for, and they will not be forgotten with time. History will hold accountable all those who remained silent about them.
And 2 Palestinians were killed at dawn on Wednesday in the ongoing Israeli shelling of the Gaza Strip in Khan Yunis. The 2 Palestinians were killed when Israeli forces bombed tents sheltering displaced persons, and they continue demolishing residential buildings in northwest of Rafah city in southern parts of the Strip. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres rejected a new Israeli plan to control aid delivery to Gaza. He said the UN would not take part in any agreement that violates the principles of humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. Guterres warned the UN's ability to deliver aid is crippled, with Gaza left without food for over a month and Palestinians facing an endless cycle of death.
UN agencies and our partners are ready and determined to deliver. But Israeli authorities' newly proposed authorization mechanisms for aid delivery risk further controlling and callously limiting aid down to the last calorie and grain of flour. Let me be clear. We will not participate in any arrangement that does not fully respect the humanitarian principles: humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. Unimpeded humanitarian access must be guaranteed, and humanitarian personnel must be given the protection that they are accorded under international law.
The Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, warned that the Palestinian issue is going through the most dangerous phase in its history due to what he described as a race to liquidate it. Following his meeting with Tunisian President Qais Said, Attaf stressed that the Palestinian issue is facing a genuine existential challenge due to the lack of means to activate the solution approved and established by international legitimacy 8 decades ago.
أمام هذه التطورات كانت ولا تزال.
Before these developments, the Middle East region and our African continent have been and continue to be the most affected. The Palestinian cause is currently experiencing one of the most dangerous phases in its history, in the midst of a real existential challenge, particularly that we are witnessing a frantic race to liquidate this cause rather than seeking a lasting solution in accordance with the principles of international legality established 8 decades ago.
And Algeria expressed regret over the U.S. reaffirmation of its position supporting the Moroccan autonomy plan under Moroccan sovereignty as the sole solution to the Sahrawi conflict. In the statement, the Algerian Foreign Ministry said it regrets the stance taken by a permanent member of the UN Security Council, which is expected to uphold international law and respect Security Council resolutions in particular.
Algeria has taken note of the U.S. State Department's confirmation of its position considering Morocco's autonomy plan under Moroccan sovereignty as the sole solution to the Western Sahara conflict. Algeria regrets the confirmation of this stance by a permanent member of the UN Security Council, whose role should be to uphold international law in general and Security Council resolutions in particular.
And so Algeria also stressed that any deviation from U.S. resolutions does not serve the settlement of the conflict. Let's take a listen.
Algeria reaffirms that the issue of Western Sahara is fundamentally a matter of incomplete decolonization and an unfulfilled right to self-determination. In reality, Western Sahara remains a non-self-governing territory as defined by the United Nations Charter, and the people of this territory are still entitled to exercise their right to self-determination in accordance with UN General Assembly Resolution 1514 on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples.
And in the same context, Algeria reiterated that the Sahrawi issue is primarily about the unfinished decolonization process and the unfulfilled right to self-determination, emphasizing that Western Sahara remains a non-autonomous territory according to the UN Charter.
Any deviation from this framework certainly does not serve the resolution of this conflict, nor does it in any way alter the fundamental facts associated with it. Facts that have been recognized and affirmed by the United Nations through all its main bodies, including the General Assembly, the Security Council, and the International Court of Justice.
The Sahrawi Arab Republic voiced deep regret over what it called the U.S. administration's clear bias toward Morocco's expansionist claims. In a statement on Wednesday, the Sahrawi Foreign Ministry said the U.S. stance contradicts international law and court rulings that affirm Western Sahara is a decolonization issue. It also reaffirmed the Sahrawi people's rejection of any attempt to trade their cause for political deals or alliances.
We deeply regret the clear bias of the U.S. administration in favor of Morocco's expansionist claims over the Sahrawi Republic, a position that blatantly contradicts international legality, including UN General Assembly and Security Council resolutions, as well as rulings from African and European courts, all of which affirm that Morocco holds no sovereignty over Western Sahara. The Sahrawi side rejects any attempt to link or trade off the decolonization of Western Sahara, a pending decolonization issue, with other political stances or alliances.
The Sahrawi Foreign Ministry said all solutions outside the framework of international law and legitimacy have failed, reaffirming the Sahrawi people's unwavering right to freedom and independence.
The Sahrawi issue cannot be resolved outside the framework of international legality, which is rooted in the sacred right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination, independence, and sovereignty, along with respect for human rights and democratic principles as the foundation of any just and lasting solution. 5 decades of conflict caused by Morocco's aggression against the Sahrawi people have shown that all attempts to impose solutions outside international legitimacy, ignoring the right to self-determination and the obligation to exercise it transparently and democratically, have ultimately failed.
And the Sahrawi Foreign Ministry added that the latest U.S. position on Western Sahara undermines its international credibility as a positive player in promoting a balanced and peaceful solution to the conflict.
The declared and blatant bias toward Morocco's illegal occupation risks undermining the current U.S. administration's credibility in playing any constructive role in the UN-led peace process in Western Sahara. It shifts Washington from being seen as a neutral facilitator to becoming a party to the conflict, a move that could further complicate the situation and fuel instability in the region. This stance not only disappoints the Sahrawi side, but also damages the U.S. international standing and its image as a country that builds its influence and leadership on the values of freedom, self-determination, and a just peace.
And as part of an official visit in his capacity as special envoy of President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algeria's Minister of State and Foreign Affairs Ahmed Attaf was received today in Tunisia by Qais Said. A statement from Algeria's Foreign Ministry explained that Minister Attaf delivered a message from President Tebboune to his Tunisian counterpart concerning the development of Algerian-Tunisian relations. He conveyed President Tebboune's satisfaction with the high level of coordination and bilateral cooperation. For his part, President Qais Said recalled the shared history of anti-colonial resistance in both countries, which reflect their common destiny, past, present, and future. And following his meeting with President Qais Said, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf stated that his visit to Tunisia falls within efforts to strengthen the tradition of consultation and coordination between the two countries, noting that Algerian-Tunisian relations are currently experiencing their brightest era.
إن الزيارة التي أقوم بها اليوم إلى تونس
The visit I'm paying today to Tunisia as special envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to his brother, President Qais Said, is part of the consecration of the traditions of bilateral consultations and coordination. These are traditions that permanently unite the leaders of both sister countries. I sincerely believe that this permanent contact represents one of the exceptional aspects that characterize Algerian-Tunisian relations. These relations, as previously described by President Qais Said, are relations among one people in two states. I'm glad that I took stock with President Qais Said of the dynamic that marks these relations in all their dimensions, and I can say without any hesitation or reservation that Algerian-Tunisian relations are experiencing their glorious age.
أن العلاقات الجزائرية التونسية تعيش اليوم أبهى عصورها.
And the Algerian foreign minister stressed that unlike Algerian-Tunisian relations, the international situation is far from promising. Let's have a listen.
وإن كان هذا
If this is the status of Algerian-Tunisian relations, the situation surrounding us at the regional, continental, and international levels is unfortunately neither promising nor reassuring. The modern system of international relations, both political and economic, is in worrying decline, due in part to the growing disregard for the most fundamental international rules and laws, the neutralization of the role of international organizations led by the United Nations, and the repeated setbacks suffered by multilateralism in the face of the rise of the logic of isolationism, the logic of force and anarchy.
ومنطق اللا قانون بعينه.
Mr. Ahmed Attaf also warned of the deteriorating situation across the African continent on multiple fronts, highlighting the alarming rise in conflicts, crises, and wars, particularly in the Sahel region.
وكذلك الأوضاع في قارتنا الإفريقية.
Similarly, the situation in our African continent is deteriorating alarmingly on all fronts: security, political, and economic. It is enough to recall the alarming number of hotbeds of conflicts, crises, and wars that dominate the continent's landscape today, affecting all its regions, and particularly the Sahel-Saharan region.
في منطقة الساحل الصحراوي.
Also, the Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister emphasized the need for coordinated Algerian-Tunisian efforts, highlighting the alignment of both countries' positions on various continental, regional, and international issues. Here's Ahmed Attaf.
في ظل أوضاع كهذه.
In light of these conditions, Algerian-Tunisian coordination is not only necessary but indispensable. I'm pleased to confirm here that this coordination has never ceased and that we are in constant contact with our Tunisian brothers and sisters because we deem that we are on the same boat. This is certainly reflected by our harmonious and consistent positions, whether on the Palestinian cause, the development of our regional neighborhood, or other areas of our common belonging.
أو في فضاءات انتمائنا المشترك الأخرى.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf met with his Tunisian counterpart Mohamed Ali Nifti in Tunis on Wednesday, followed by a joint working session. A statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry said the talks reviewed bilateral cooperation and highlighted the strong human ties between the two countries. Both sides agreed to intensify efforts to implement previous agreements and prepare for the next High Joint Commission session in Tunisia later this year. And Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian expressed readiness to negotiate with Washington, but not directly. During a National Nuclear Technology Day ceremony, Pezeshkian stressed that Iran is not seeking to develop a nuclear bomb, adding that what he called conspiracies and plots cannot threaten Iran's independence and security.
We are holding talks. As the Supreme Leader has stated, we are engaging indirectly with dignity and pride, and with every assurance necessary to show that we are not pursuing a nuclear bomb. They have come 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times to investigate, and they can come investigate again. We have not been, are not, and will not be pursuing a nuclear bomb.
An Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tuesday that his country will not hold direct negotiations with the U.S. regarding its nuclear program as long as maximum pressure and military threats continue. In remarks reported by official Iranian media, Araghchi emphasized that Tehran doubts the intention and willingness of the U.S. administration to engage in fair and serious negotiations over the Iranian nuclear program. The U.S. Department of the Treasury announced new sanctions on Iran in a move aimed at preventing Tehran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. And in a statement, the department said these sanctions target 5 entities and 1 individual for supporting Iran's nuclear program. The Treasury clarified that the targeted entities include the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran and its subsidiary, the Centrifuge Technology Company. Algeria and Somalia have requested an emergency session of the UN Security Council to discuss the repercussions of the Israeli aggression on Syria, according to the Algerian news agency. The agency added that the request by Algeria and Somalia came after consultation agreement with the Arab group in New York. An Yemen Houthi group said Wednesday it shot down a U.S. MQ-9 drone over Al Jawf province during what it called a Houthi or a hostile mission. Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sariyah said the drone was downed with a locally made missile in response to ongoing U.S. airstrikes on Yemen. He reaffirmed the group's support for Gaza and vowed to continue operations until the aggression on Gaza ends.
The air defenses managed to shoot down a hostile American MQ-9 drone while it was carrying out a hostile mission over Al Jawf province, using a suitable locally made missile. This is the 3rd drone that the air defense has successfully downed within 10 days. The Yemeni armed forces confirm the continuation of their operations in support of Gaza and their ongoing defensive mission to confront any aggression against our country.
And tensions have escalated between China and the U.S., with both sides having just imposed some serious new tariffs. China's raised duties on U.S. goods to 84%, while President Trump has retaliated with a massive 125% hike on imports from China. It's a dramatic escalation that's only making things more intense between the two countries. Marwa Belaiwer has more.
The world's 2 largest economies are locking horns again in an intensifying trade war. Beijing fired the latest shot, raising tariffs on American imports to 84% in what state media described as a firm response to U.S. aggression.
The State Council Tariff Commission announced today that as of April 10 at 12:01 p.m., tariffs on U.S. imports will jump from 34% to 84%, as outlined in its 2025 announcement number 4.
Hours later, President Donald Trump hit back in a surprise announcement raising tariffs on Chinese goods to a staggering 125%. This tit-for-tat escalation threatens to derail global trade as companies brace for rising prices and disrupted supply chains. Europe has voiced deep concern over the fallout, urging restraint and warning of a ripple effect that could harm global markets and fragile recoveries. Analysts warn the mounting tariffs could hurt consumers on both sides, fueling inflation in the U.S. and worsening China's already slowing economy. Tariffs' impact is already being felt across markets, supply chains, and households around the world. However, Trump has abruptly backed down on taxes, granting a 90-day pause for most countries except for China.
I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out amazing. I think that our country is going to be at the end of a year or shorter, but I think we're going to have something that nobody would have dreamt possible. A man like Roger Penske, I don't want to get him in trouble with China, so I won't, but he would know that someday you have to cut the bow and you have to do what you have to do, right, Roger?
As global tensions rise, the trade war between Washington and Beijing is no longer just a policy dispute. It's a full-blown economic confrontation.
So, if you look at that...
With this, ladies and gentlemen, our program has come to an end. Thank you for watching and have a great night.